That's a free one? Hello? Ah, that's just home. There you go. That's what I need. Add one advance. Have to risk and continue. There's 6 viewers. Hello? Hello? Well, we're here. Let me just do a little bit of setup. Yeah, Nicto. Um, Hold on for a second. I think I'm gonna blow away this machine. That's weird. Well, is anyone on? Media drive. Actually, you know what? I don't want that. Okay, I don't need that. What? Hello? Hello, everyone. Hello? Anyone there? Anyone? Is anyone there? Yeah, no one's in the chat right now. Come on. I'm ready to go. Oh, there you are. Okay. Hey, Zia Jumbo. Hello, hello, hello. You know the drill. Mic check, audio check, video check. We any good? Any good? Hello? Mic check, audio check, video check. Mic check, audio check, video check. Check, check, 1, 2. We good? We're good to go? We good to go? Anyone on? Alright, sound good. Alright, I'm ready to go. 4:31. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Another Thursday on Twitch. Hello, thanks for joining in. Hey, Explorer88, how are you? So, the usual spiel. I'm Ming Chow. I'm Associate Teaching Professor at Tufts University. And this is the Introduction to Security class. This is, episode 6, season 6. Today's a very short one. Today's a very short topic. And hey, Tiny Epsilon, how are you? Hey, Tiny Epsilon, how are you? So here's the question today is this, and I get this question quite a bit. And the question is, how do I check if my systems are secure? How do I check? Actually, I'll do it one better. Hold on. How do I check if my systems are secure or have any vulnerabilities? Okay, that's it. And it's a question I get a lot of times. So last week, we talked about poking holes in the systems. But vulnerabilities, there's so many vulnerabilities out there. So you may be wondering if there are any tools, techniques that you can check your home system for vulnerabilities. I mean, we're talking about the entire network. We're talking about routers, watches, phones, laptop, desktop, video game systems, you name it. So that's on a small scale, but it can also be done on a large scale as well too. So corporations and companies have fleets and fleets of computers. So is there a way that there gotta be tools that you can use to check for vulnerabilities, right? And the answer is yes. And there are many tools out there that can help, check for check for your systems or systems plural for vulnerabilities. There are free and open source solutions to commercial products. Okay, so the first tool I want to show you, and it is arguably one of the most popular and most well-known um, vulnerability scanners out there, is called Nessus. 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 Nessus Nessus got a very interesting history. Originally it started out as an open source product, free and open source. Then a few years, and this was in the mid 2000s, they decided, you know what, we're taking ourselves off of open source and we're going commercial. Okay, so Nessus was at one point open source, but now it's closed source and a commercial product. The home company is Tenable, a very famous cybersecurity company. Go to tenable.com. We have lots of friends there. Um, Exposure management platform, and but their most famous product is Nessus. Okay, and so what Nessus does is vulnerability scanning and assessments. It provides pretty nice reports on, okay, what the vulnerabilities are on this system, and you can scan a wide range of machines, infrastructures, computing equipment on your network. There are a couple options that are offered right now. It is a paid subscription version that's expert and professional. It's not cheap. Couple $1,000. Let me just see how much this is. Okay, so 1 year's like $5,000. You can try for free. It does lots of scannings. Do they have any? Okay, lots of pre-built scanning policies. What about? I don't think there is an IP address limit for the paid versions. For the professional version, you can buy it for it's like almost $3,400. I think it's 1 year. Yeah, 1 year. It's $3,400. Okay, this is the one that lots and lots of consultant pen testers, security practitioners use. That's a long story for another day. It has customizable reports. Um, you can add. I don't know what the limitations of this are. Okay, so obviously, if you're going to be learning, you're a student. You probably don't want to use this. I mean, it's pretty expensive. There is what is called Nessus Essential. Nessus Essential. This is their free product. It allows you to scan your environment up to 16 IP addresses per scanner with high speed, with in-depth assessments. Okay, so this is the free version. There is also an education. I mean, Tenable Education also. This is a good resource for you as well. Tenable for Education. Here you go. Tenable for Education. This is what you want. So you may be wondering, do I need to know this stuff? Do I need to? Well, here's the thing: is that in the security world, Nessus is very well known and used. It is very well known and used. They have an educational program here. Join Tenable for Education. Begin using a vulnerability assessment in your classroom. Well, how this is? Okay, this is getting started, and lo and behold, you will actually go back to the page. Nessus Essentials. Registration is, you just register for an activation code. I put in using fake first name, fake last name all the time. I've registered for Nessus many, many times. So, okay. Alright, that's nice. How do you use this thing? Once you actually register for an activation code, there is software that you install. What it's going to install is going to be an engine. Actually, the download is not too big. That's a catch, though, is after you install Nessus on your system, it will just download gigabytes and gigabytes of updates, namely dictionary files containing definitions of well-known vulnerabilities. Okay, so once you install, it's platform, you can use it on Mac OS, Linux, or Windows. Once you've installed Nessus, I have it installed on my Mac. So what it has is you go to your system settings, and there will be what is called a system setting for Nessus. It's an engine, it runs behind the scene. Um, the Nessus vulnerability scanner is running. You can scan your system for vulnerabilities. I have it run on startup. You don't have to. I just let it on startup because, I'm kind of lazy. Okay. Now you may be wondering, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so I installed this Nessus thing. I see that there is an engine or a control panel that is run all the time. All right, how do you use it? Okay, now this is where the fun part goes in. Once you have the Nessus engine running, all you need to do is go to your web browser, your favorite web browser, any web browser that you want. You go to https://localhost, because that engine is going to run a server on your computer, and it runs on port 834. There it is. Okay, so yeah, you go to your favorite web browser, get https://localhost:834. That's the same page here. And the first time that you run the web page, and if you don't have a username and password already, it's going to be prompted. You're going to be prompted to enter in the activation code and create a username and password. So my username is DEFCON and the password is DEFCON. Yeah, remember me, sign in. The first time you actually open up Nessus, it can take a few minutes to download all the vulnerability dictionary files, also known as rules. Okay, so the last time I did a scan on my network was on January 10th. So one of the things that you're going to be asked, the first thing that you're going to ask is, well, we need to get some data. And the first thing you're going to be asked is to do what is called a basic network scan. And the basic network scan, what it's going to do, is just going to scan your entire network, all devices, for any vulnerabilities. So when I did this scan on January 10 at 2:57 p.m., okay, so I found on my network I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 IP addresses. 192.168.1.1, 192.168.1.242. I have no idea what that is. One of them, I forget. 192.168.1.244. Another one that's at 192.168.1.10. That is my pie hole to block ads on my entire network. And I have another device, I have no idea what this is, a 192.168.1.216. So this basic network scan, as you can see, was on January 21st. Took 21 minutes to find these 3 to 5 devices, and also to check all 5 of these devices for vulnerabilities. And you can see, well, the device at 192.168.1.1 have 9 vulnerabilities, 9 medium vulnerabilities, and the blue 93 are just informational issues. Okay, so 192.168.1.1 is my router. So let's check. You want to see what vulnerabilities was discovered on the router? There you go. There's a bunch of SSFU SSL issues, DNS issues, a bunch of HTTPS. Usually you don't care about the informational issues, but let's click on SSL. And you can see, CVSS score 6.5, SSL certificate cannot be trusted. When you do vulnerability scanners, it will say, okay, what the vulnerability is, description, and sometimes it gives you the proof, the evidence. Here's the description of the vulnerability. Here it is. And it says, okay, the reason why we marked this as a vulnerability because, here you go, here's the information. Okay. Go back. Self-signed certificate. Hey, I did not do anything with this thing, so I have no idea. Okay. That's good. All right. So, Let's take a look at my Pi-hole at 192.168.1.10. Okay, there's again SSL issues. SSL certificate expiry. All right, fine. I don't know what the other three are. I don't know what this one is. Another SSL issue. All right, this is interesting. Okay, so this was a basic network scan that was done. Now, what I can show you is I know I have a rogue, deliberately vulnerable web server up and running at 192.168.1.220. Remember this one? 192.168.1.220 is deliberately vulnerable. Why? Well, it has a hackme.php page. It has an instance of the damn vulnerable web application that is running. Yep. And furthermore, it also has another deliberately vulnerable web application called Motilidae running. There you go. Listing of vulnerabilities. View logs. Alright. So this is another deliberately vulnerable web application. There's a couple of deliberately vulnerable web applications that are on 192.168.1.220. Okay? And it uses a mix of HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, that's fine. So you may be wondering, okay, is there a way that we can use Nessus to scan all the vulnerabilities on 192.168.1.220 on this device? And the answer is yes. Let's do one out. So we're going to, what they called here is at the upper right corner, we're going to do a new scan. All right. So what are we going to do? What we are going to do is, now we have a challenge here. We have a decision to make. All right. One of the nice things about Nessus is there's many built-in options. You can do a basic network scan. You can do a scan for malware. Scan for malware on Unix and Windows systems. If you have a mobile device, you have to pay for this. You have to access mobile devices by a Microsoft Exchange or an MDM. Ooh, look at this. You can create a Nessus scan for a web application test. You can do a Nessus scan for CVE 2017 5753, 5715, and 5754, Spectre and Meltdown. You can even do a vulnerability scan using Nessus for WannaCry, the ransomware. These are new. Some of these are new for me. Ripple 20. Remote scanned fingerprint code for running the Trek stack in the network, zero login remote scan, SolarGate, Print Nightmare. Yeah, a lot of the more recent vulnerabilities have really like exotic names in them. Conti leak, chat, ransomware ecosystem. There's a whole bunch of vulnerability, many different types of vulnerability that you can scan for. You can even, and this is where, more importantly, why Tenable makes big money each and every year. A big part of cybersecurity is compliance. So many companies use Nessus for what is called compliance scanning. So if you're going to be doing, I'll give you an idea. I'll give you an example. So if you're a company that's going to do any work with payment cards, like credit cards, you need to be in compliance with what is called PCI DSS version 11.2.1 for vulnerabilities. Okay, so in order to do any business using payment card, you have to be in compliance. Your company have to be in compliance with PCI network. You can do, there's even a PCI quarterly, external scan, policy compliance. I don't know what SCAP and OVAL are. So, a big part of cybersecurity is with compliance. So this example that we have, this target at 192.168.1.220, well, I said there's a whole bunch of a couple of deliberately vulnerable web applications. So what would make sense is, okay, why don't we just scan for published and known web vulnerabilities using Nessus scanner? This is probably the best test, one that makes the most sense. So I'm going to click on Web Application Test. I'm going to make a name for it. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to say Rogue Web Server Test. Description is going to be March 9, 2023 on Twitch. I'm going to put that in my scans. Targets. You can do a range of IPs, range of domains, a single IP, a single domain. Using Nessus Essentials, just a caveat, you only can use up to 16 IP addresses. You can only have use only 16 IP addresses. I'm well under that right now. I'll do 192.168.1.220. That's it. At the most rudimentary level, that's all you need to. That's all you need to do. If you want to specify credentials for username and passwords, like HTTP stuff, you can actually add that as well too. Let's not do that. Make it nice and easy. Just type in 192. We're just going to enter in 192.168.1.220 as our target. That's it. We're going to hit save, save. And so we have our web application test here on Nessus. Next step, hit the little run button to launch the scan, to run the Nessus scan against 192.168.1.220 for web vulnerabilities. So we're going to get started. All right. And then soon, and there you go. And you can see that the scan is now running. If you click on it, you will see any vulnerabilities that are fine. You can it will pop up here. And so we just let it run for a while. How did you configure Nessus? Oh, yeah, Tiny Epsilon. Okay, that's a good, okay. So how did you configure Nessus after the installation? That's for proxy, no. Is there a tutorial that we can use to set it up? Generally speaking, the answer is there is no let's see. Hold on. Nessus Essentials Setup. Let's take a look. I did not have to type in anything with proxy host and user agent. Didn't have to do any of that. Here. I'm going to paste this here. All right. This is an ongoing, yeah. No, that does not actually have to configure Nessus. Install Nessus for, let's say, Mac OS. Install from there you go. Oh, here it is. Start here. Yep, here's the setup instructions. So for Tiny Epsilon, that is, start there. Start there. I was not asked for a proxy host, port, user. I was not asked for any of that stuff. It offers an offline register. Yeah, you can do that as well too. What I did is nope, I did not do the offline. No, I did not. I skipped all that because I registered for an activation code. I registered for an activation code before I installed everything. So get a So step number one I would do is go to Tenable for Education, go to Get Started, register for an activation code. That's the first thing that I did. Then you install Nessus on your system. Step number three after you install everything is to go to https://localhost:834. That's it. I did not do the offline option. So when the web browser opened up, created a username, password account, typed in activation code. That was all I did. That's all I did. It's been the same process for years. Okay. Is your okay? So think oscillator is my Mac. Okay, that is a good question. So this has actually become a very tricky thing. I'm happy that you asked. This is actually a really good question. I have an M1. However, Nessus right now is here is what is interesting is the only available option for Mac OS is um, x86. So I use the x86 version for Mac OS. In fact, there are almost no, it's almost like there's only a few options. Is there a Raspberry Pi option here? I don't think, I definitely have seen a Raspberry Pi option on here, but it has to be like, um, there's very few ARM version. Okay, but right now, the only option that you have for Mac OS is x86, even though if you're on Intel. There's also virtual machines and Docker that you can use as well too. The Docker one is also x86 Arch. Yeah. So yeah, the one hiccup is, the one caveat is right now there's been a lot of chatter about for Nest like, hey, when you're gonna release an ARM version, and they keep on saying they're just working on it. Okay. So yeah, I use the x86 version of Nessus on my Mac, despite having an M1. Yep. All right. How's this going? How is this going? Ooh, look at this. So now we got a few vulnerabilities. We'll just let this keep on going, but go to vulnerabilities tab. Check this out. Look at that. Web server transmit clear text credentials. That vulnerability sounds pretty damn familiar. Let's click this out. The remote web server contains several HTML forms containing an input of the type password which transmit information over to a remote web server in clear text. Why is it low though? That's an attacker eavesdropping the traffic between the web browser and the server may obtain logins and passwords of valid users. Solution is make sure that every sensitive form transmit content over HTTPS. So if you're curious, about the output, the proof of this vulnerability, there is one. Look at the output. Damn vulnerable web application. Actually, it's on port 80. Alright, that's a legitimate vulnerability. Let's go back. Web application potentially vulnerable to clickjacking. Alright, the description of clickjacking vulnerability. See also, the following pages do not use a clickjacking mode by mitigation. Yada, 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 yada. Okay. Alright. So far, what is it? It's been 6 minutes? Been 6 minutes, found a couple of vulnerabilities. But it's going to take a lot longer. So you're going to need to let this thing run until it's finished. When it has a check mark, when it says completed, that means you're done. Okay? That means it's done. We're going to need to keep on running this. Now, hold on. Let me get my water. All right. So, I know that some of you here may have ideological issues about using commercial software. Okay, Nessus, although it's well known, some people may have gripes that, it's the commercial software. If I go to do a search for Nessus, I want to go to the Wiki. Is there a Wikipedia version? Yeah, there is a Wikipedia entry for Nessus. Nessus is a proprietary vulnerability scanner developed by Tenable. Renaud Drayson created the Nessus project as a free remote remote security scanner. On October the 5th, 2005, it went from, here it is, it went from GPU public license to proprietary license. Now, so a lot of people will have a bone to pick with using proprietary commercial software. So if you are one of those people who actually want to have a good vulnerability scanner just like Nessus, but you want to use more of like a free and open source version, there's OpenVAS. OpenVAS. OpenVAS, actually I can click on here, is an Open Vulnerability Assessment System, also originally known as Nessus. Okay, put it this way, what OpenVAS is, it's an open source fork of It's a fork of what was the open source Nessus from many years ago. OpenVAS is free and open source. So you go to openvas.org. So it works very similar to Nessus. There it is, openvas.org. OpenVAS is a full-featured vulnerability scanner. Capabilities include unauthenticated and authentication testing, yada yada yada. The scanner obtained tests for detecting vulnerabilities from a feed that had a long history and daily update. We're talking about going way back to 2000 and the 2000. Here it is. You can read about the history here. Okay. So I'm actually wondering, did it mention anything about Nessus? Yep. Here it is, the very first line. The developers of the vulnerability scanner Nessus decided to discontinue to work under the open source licenses and switch to a proprietary business model. So the one thing about so how do you install OpenVAS? Well, here's the thing about OpenVAS. The best thing to do is probably is to use Kali Linux. Kali Linux, probably the best thing is free and open source scanner. Here it is. System requirements. Now here's the one thing, the caveats here. It is resource intensive to use OpenVAS, and it's not as nice and user friendly as what Nessus is. Okay, so your best way to run OpenVAS is to use a virtual machine, namely a Kali Linux virtual machine. Okay. It is not, again, it's resource intensive and it's not as nice user interface wise as Nessus. So here I'm going to post a detail, and if you actually want to use Nessus, if you want to use OpenVAS, best to use Kali Linux on a virtual machine. Okay, and I give you some screenshots, yada yada yada. Okay, fine. How we doing here? How we doing with this? Okay, so now it's 5:01, and ooh, this is not good. Oh, so now we can see the number of vulnerabilities. The medium ones went up to 6, and now the critical ones went up to 2. Okay, so now what happened? Alright, so we have a couple of vulnerabilities. Okay, here's a new one. Git repository served by web server. Okay, interesting. The web server on the remote host allowed for read access to a Git repository. This potential flaw can be used to download content from a web server that might be otherwise private. Solution is verified that listed Git repositories are served intentionally. More details, and here is your proof. Okay, actually there are not one but 2 here it is. The following repositories were found on the remote web server. DVWA and Motilidae. But that's not wrong. Okay, that's not wrong at all. That's absolutely correct. Now, what are the critical vulnerabilities? Because the maroon red, 5%, these are not good. Here you go. Critical. This is bad. Anything time that is critical, that's bad. PHP unsupported version detection. Okay, so according to its version, the installation of PHP on a remote host is no longer supported. Lack of support implies that no new security patches for the product will be released by the vendor. As a result, it is likely to contain security vulnerabilities. Solution is to upgrade. Well, there you go. And the proof is if you run http rogue.land motilidae php info, and anytime you expose this kind of information, it's not good. Rogue.land is 192.168.1.220 on my network, and there it is. This is not good. But first of all, just having this page exposed is bad news. And this is an old version of PHP. Here it is. It even had the latest version of PHP is 8.0. Okay, let's go back. Any more critical vulnerabilities? Ooh, we got more. Now we got more stuff. Okay, browsable web directories. Multiple Nessus plugins identify directories on the web server that are browsable. Make sure that browsable directories do not leak confidential information or give access to sensitive resources. Oh, all right. The following directories are browsable. Really? Go to /dvwa/dvw. Oh yeah, that's a browsable directory. Yep, that's a problem. Okay. All right. So we're gonna still leave Nessus running. All right. So Nessus, of course, is a very famous vulnerability scanner, but it's certainly not the only one. There are many vulnerability scanners for specific elements, such as, well, as you saw earlier, there's a vulnerability scanner for malware. There's also vulnerability scanners for web servers and web applications. And one of my absolute most famous, my favorite tool is Nikto. Nikto. Where have you heard that before? So if you did the alarm lab, you had to detect Nikto scans. So what the hell is Nikto scans? Well, the reason why in the SCAPI slash incident alarm lab I had you detect something called Nikto scan is because of today. Nikto! Nikto! There you go. Nikto is a very, very fast and open source web server scanner which performs comprehensive tests against web servers items, including 6,700 potentially dangerous file programs. Check for outdated versions of over 1,000 servers. What? What? SE version or specific version? Is there over 1,200 servers and version specific problems on over 270 servers. So if you are only concerned with web servers, you know, computers that actually that actually works on the web, yeah, Nikto is really, really nice because it's command line based and it's very, very fast. Caveat here though, Nikto is not designed as a stealthy tool. It will test a web server in the quickest time possible and is obviously in the log files of an IPS or IDS. However, there is okay, not every check, and here's a warning that they give you, not every check is a security problem, though most are. Okay? So here's the features, yada yada yada, yada yada yada, there's a whole list. Okay, so what do? Look at that. There's also, coincidentally, there's also an ad here with NetSparkler. I've never used it before. Scan your website for cross-site scripting and SQL injection vulnerabilities. Small world. I'm going to copy this link. The installation is run from a Git repo. It's got http github.com. Here it is. Nikto is free and open source. It uses Perl, P-E-R-L. Okay, now here is Nikto. The repository, the web server scanner, the documentation, and run normally. Alright, you can even run a Git container. I actually don't have, so here it is. So I'm getting my documents folder. I'm going to do a Git clone. Nikto, there you go. Alright, so now I'm going to cd Nikto ls. Alright, so I got the readme, the dev doc, the documentation, cd program. And there it is. Databases, docs, nikto.pl. The entry is nikto.pl. It's a Perl file, Perl programming language, which is also the second coming of Voodoo. We do more nikto.pl, and it was written in 2001 by Chris Solo. Like that. This is the entire source code of Nikto. So here it is. So you do Perl, or you can do one of two things. /nikto.pl. That's one way. I can add a screen, or you can do Perl nicto.pl. They're both the same thing. There it is. Look at that. All command line based. Error, no host specified. There's so many different options. Okay? So if I got a 192, got 168, I want a 220. Oh, that doesn't make sense. Advanced. Accept the risk. Now I have, well, let's give one quick shot to go to Motilidae. Motilidae also has as a view log feature, and then you can see someone visited, which is basically, this case is going to be Nessus that visited all these. I made a log here. I'm going to clear this log here. This is called the show log. Delete the logs. So I'm going to go to view logs, and yeah, there's just nothing there. I'm going to leave this page on. So now I'm going to clear my screen. Now I'm going to do /nicto.pl minus host equals, I think I just need to do 192.168.1.220. I hit enter. Okay, I found on my server is Nginx 1.18.0. Anti-click checking, no CGI directories actually open. I don't know if we're going to find anything. That's it, it's running. It's running. We'll just let this thing run on a command line. Let's let it run. Do a restart or refresh here. Oh, Jesus. "30 entries. Show logs. We're going to delete the logs again. I know that Nicto will actually can create like a whole bunch of entries here. Alright, while Nicto is running in the background, one of our other options, let's take a look at how our Nessus scan is doing. Still running. Okay, so now we have 2 critical vulnerabilities, now 4 high vulnerabilities, and 16 medium vulnerabilities. Take a look. Here it is. Look, wow, look at that. Here you go. CGI generic, found a SQL injection. Found a SQL injection. By providing specifically crafted parameters to CGI, Nessus was able to get error from the underlying database. This error suggests that the CGI is available. I forget what CGI stands for. It is affected by a SQL injection vulnerability. And there you go. Motilidae. Hey, even found a cross-site scripting as well. Medium. Even found that as well. Look at that. Yep. Yeah, that's SQL injection. That looked like a SQL injection payload. I mean, a cross-site scripting payload to me. Yeah, that was a cross-site scripting. It's a JavaScript. It's a JavaScript. Yep. Published in 2009. Look at that. See what else do we got? Generic HTML injection. There's cookie injection. Git repository. We've seen path traversal. Look at that. The web server hosts CGI script failure to adequate to sanitize request strings and are affected by directory traversal or local file inclusion vulnerabilities. Now here it is. Go to Motilidae. Oh, look at that. Let's copy that. Refresh the logs here. Do we get anything? Oh yeah, look at that. Someone's hammering this. Someone is hammering Motilidae. So go to Motilidae. Look at that. Oh yeah, that's a local file inclusion. That's a local file inclusion. There is a query string here. Question mark page equal. Can I go to https.google.com? I fix that as well. Oh yeah, look at that. I got a remote file inclusion here at the question mark page equals. Look at that. That's etc password. Oh yeah. Cool. That's a local file inclusion. because we're actually rendering the /etc/password. That's a serious vulnerability. And I got HTTPS. Let's not do 4chan today. Let's do Boston.com. Can I load Boston.com? Oh yeah, I can load a web page within a web page. Look at that. Oh yeah. Yes. That's a vulnerability. Not good. So that's an example. We had an example of a local file inclusion and a remote file inclusion. Yep. And Nessus found out. Yeah, found it. Page, yeah. There it is. More. All right, that's good. Nictoscan is still running. The next Nictoscan is running still. A lot of times you can just spit out lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff here. Okay. So the Nessus scan is going to run. Oh, there it is. It ends. Oh, okay. So Nicto, actually here it is. 8,107 requests, no errors, and 2 items reported on the remote host. 1 host tested. All right. So we're done with the Nicto scam. I'm not very happy about this. Is there anything else? Can I actually do target directory? No SSL option. There should be a way I can just specify like a specific folder or something. Database check, formatting, ID, no, port to use. Here we go. User agent, update, URL. Well, let's go that. I'm going to do a URL version. Let me try the utility this time. Oh dear. Let's this thing run. What the hell? Interesting. Now becoming really specific. No CGI directory found. Cookie PHP session ID. All right. Robots.txt contains 6 entries which should be manually reviewed. Really? There's a robots.txt there? Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, so I found that out. Here it is. Look at that. Okay, so it's interesting now how this time I'm becoming more specific with the URL and it's actually reporting more stuff. Motility index.php, yada yada yada, etc password. Oh yeah, that's a file traversal. Okay. Found a whole bunch of, this is like a directory busting here. Found that there's an includes directory, a passwords directory? Huh. Didn't know that. Didn't know that. Okay. More. Actually references GitHub as well. So you may be wondering what OSVB. Okay, OSVDB is. OSVDB was the open source vulnerability database. It was a competitor to what is now known as CVE. A few of my friends actually wrote and maintained OSVDB for a few years, and then of course, they said we can't keep up anymore. This project is too hard. We're done. We're not maintaining it. Look at that. Found a configure, and it finds a whole bunch of directory listings. So again, interesting here. It's like Nessus it found a git index file may contain directory listing information. So interesting that I made I did a more specific URL instead. I used dash URL instead of dash host, and I got some pretty damn good results. 8,114 requests, 0 errors, 149 items reported on the remote host. Okay. And that was pretty quick. It took 129 seconds to do to report all this. this is not bad. I mean, this is the reason why Nessa's, Nikto is one of my favorite scanners because it's quick and it's pretty easy to use, all command line based only. Nessus is still running, I'm pretty damn sure. I'm sure. Yep, it's still running. Still, you got 2 critical vulnerabilities. You got 4 vulnerabilities. Okay. All right. So you may be wondering, is that it? Are we doing any more vulnerability scanning? Well, there's a couple more. Um, Rapid7 actually has something called Nexpose. Nexpose on-premise vulnerability scanner. This is a commercial product. Nexpose by Rapid7 integrates well with Metasploit, which we'll use a little bit later in this course. It's your on-premise vulnerability scanner. Collect, prioritize, remediate, and vulnerability management software help you act at the moment of impact. Vulnerability pop up every day. Okay, all right, that's good. Verdict. Again, like Nessus, Nexpose is not limited to just web application. It can look for like malware, open ports. There's many different to search for. Or know what vulnerability can be actively exploited, which to fix first. Okay, it actually integrates well with Metasploit. Okay, this is another one. Again, Nexpose is commercial. It's a commercial product. Okay. Don't know if they actually give a free version of it. I think, yeah, there's a try now, but, is there an education version? I'm not sure. Burp Suite. Look at Burp Suite again. Now, last week when we talked about Burp Suite, I said Burp Suite is largely a commercial, but there is a community edition which is, free and platform independent. But the pro version actually has vulnerability scanner. It actually has an automated vulnerability scanner for web applications. Anything that's HTTP or HTTPS, or it can even do automated checking for SQL injection, cross-site scripting, that kind of stuff. But that's pro version only. So like I said earlier, if you have a bone to pick with using commercial software and commercial proprietary software, is there an open source version of Burp? You may be wondering about if there's an open source version of it, and the answer is yes. OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, close this out. They're famous for the OWASP Top 10. Oh, but they also have a software called Zap Proxy. This is free and open source. OWASP Z Applications Zap Proxy is the world's most widely used web application scanner, free open source, it's rapidly maintained. It's basically what it is everything that is burp. If it smells like burp, it acts like burp, it's just not burp. So you may be wondering, like, okay, so if OWASP Zap is free and open source, why do people use Burp more? Well, largely the reason is there are features. First of all, network effects. Like a lot of people who do cybersecurity, they use Burp. Burp been around for a long time, a long time, and Zap has spun off a few times. It's been actively maintained. It's really nice now. So you can install Burp. You can go to download now, platform independent, Mac OS installer, you got all that. And I have it installed on my computer here. OWASP app. Yeah, Nessus is still running. OWASP Zap will have a proxy, very much like Burp. But the one thing that Zap has is a automated scanner. So if you want to do proxy mode, there is a proxy mode here. What the hell is it? There is standard mode, protected as attack mode, the request, response, repeater. Where are they? Oh yes, here it is. Open the web browser. You have chosen I think you have to configure this to actually work with the browser, so there's some configuration to be done. Manual Explorer. Let's not do that. But, okay. Oh, okay, so now it looks like, alright, so it does, okay, cool. The browser is this browser automatically configured to proxy by a WebS app. Alright, so it does have, well, it doesn't have a built-in browser like, is this using my version of Firefox? Okay, no, it looks like it is a built-in version of Firefox within Zap. Alright, that's pretty cool. So if I go to https, facebook.com, does it do it? Request response mode? Oh yeah. So yeah, it looks like the built-in web browser is Firefox. Alright. So yes, like burp, there is a built-in browser. It's just Firefox. Um, so you may be wondering, wait a minute, we're doing vulnerability scanning. Does OWASP Zap have a vulnerability scanner? And the answer is yes. This is, well, again, as Zap and as OWASP Zap is free and open source. Here it is, automated scan. Type in a URL. URL to attack, let's say Mutility. That's the URL. Let's attack. And it does a scan. 42%, 451 URLs running. Not bad. Okay, it's just gonna keep on running. And where are the alerts? Where are the outputs? Go to the alerts tab. And it's finding, clickjacking, content security headers, not, yeah, we've already seen that. Well, alright, but where's the cross-site scripting and SQL injection stuff? Oh, just let it run. Okay. Yeah, just let it run. We don't need that anymore. Nope. Nessus is still running. 2 critical vulnerabilities, 4 high vulnerabilities, 16 medium ones. Oh yeah, SQL injection, found cross-site scripting, web server transmits clear text credentials. Okay, you'd name it, Alright, so we'll just let this scan run. We'll just let it run for the night, I guess. I don't know when this is gonna be finished. The rogue target is pretty damn slow. This is gonna take, that was done? I guess that was. Here it is. Oh no, it looks like it's still working. Is it still working? Still looks like it's still working. Using a traditional spire to create content. Looks like it's still running. See the numbers going up. Script on safer valves. Alright, let it run. Okay, so what we have done, we've showed Nessus, we've used Nikto, we've used Burp. Well, I've showed Burp last week. Using, alright, that was weird, it wasn't showing up. We're using a Zap. There's other tools, as we saw Nexpose by Rapid7. There's many different types of vulnerability scanners. In fact, if you're using GitHub, now a part of any repository, you can do automated scanning for vulnerabilities in your source code. So vulnerability scanners are a thing, and there are many options to choose from depending on what your needs are. If you want everything, usually you can't go wrong with Nessus. If you're looking for just scanning web applications and web servers, you have a lot of options there. There are free and open source versions such as Nikto, there is Burp, there's Zap, there is also a Nessus as well. Depends on what your needs are. But yeah, there are definitely ways to check if your systems are secure or have vulnerabilities. But here's a very important lesson learned. A very important lesson learned for today. And this is going to be my final message of today. Now, as you see, as we don't want this anymore. Quit this version of Firefox. Okay, so it is a built-in version of Firefox. Oh, look at that. The Nessus scan of the rogue web server at 192.168.1.220 is done. 527. Now, it started at 450, took 37 minutes. Yeah. But hold on now. No, hold on. We're not done. Yeah, and so this might be a good way to learn your own home security. Absolutely it is. That absolutely it is, and access. Absolutely it is. Absolutely. This is a good way to learn your own home security. But there is a very, very important fine point. Two of them. There's a very, very, very important fine point. Here's an example that of a target 192.168.1.220. This is a target on my home network that is riddled with vulnerabilities. Okay, that's bad. I mean, this is just really bad. I think we can all agree on that. Look at this target at 2 critical vulnerabilities, 6 high vulnerabilities, 18 medium ones. That's pretty bad. I mean, this is really, really bad. Anytime you see at least, look at anytime you see critical or high, it's not good. Not good. Critical and high vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities that you got to fix and resolve right away. We can all agree on that. Yes, map out your own study of your own systems and network. True, absolutely. But here's the thing. Now, this is an example of of a system that is riddled with vulnerabilities. There are some things that got to be fixed. I think we can make no mistake about that. But then access that here's another thing. Here's a question I want to ask. What if Nessus or your favorite vulnerability scanning product does not return any critical, high, or medium vulnerabilities? Now, in an extremely rare case, what happens if your favorite vulnerability scanner does not return any vulnerabilities, does not return any findings? Nothing. Does that mean that the system is all secure? I want to ask you. That's the important question. Does it mean that your system is secure? When your favorite vulnerability scanning product does not return anything? And the answer is this. The answer is if your vulnerability scanner, oh yeah, tiny epsilon, just okay, that's the perfect answer. It's a flat out no. It's a flat out no. Even if your favorite vulnerability scanner returns nothing, no result, no nothing. Zen Access said no, flat out. You don't even need to say anything else. No. That's it. The whole point is exactly this line. What Zen Access, Zen, what you said, you don't know what you don't know. We can actually just repeat this after many, many times. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. My friend and mentor, Gary McGraw, when I was learning cybersecurity in the early 2000s, he introduced this concept which he'd written many times called the Badness-O-Meter. The Badness-O-Meter. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to quit out of here. Here's what the Badness-O-Meter is. A Badness-O-Meter is basically exactly you don't know what you don't know. Literally, this is like the perfect final line by Zen. If there's a way that I could give you like a bonus or something, like you won the internets for the day, Zen or Axis. You don't know what you don't know. And I want to show you this picture called a Badness-O-Meter. The Badness-O-Meter, and I'm going to blow this picture up. This is a picture of what vulnerability scanning is like. Okay, so here's the thing. If your vulnerability scanner returns a list of vulnerabilities, you're in deep trouble. The Badness-O-Meter describes how vulnerability scanners really work. If your favorite vulnerability scanner returns vulnerabilities, like what Nessus did for our target today, and it found a bunch of critical and and high vulnerability, we're in deep trouble. We got to fix those. But if your favorite vulnerability scanning software does not return anything, okay, that doesn't mean the system is perfect. It means who knows. Here's the caveat if you haven't figured it out yet today. Vulnerability scanners only scan for known vulnerabilities. Not the unknown vulnerabilities, the ones that are not discovered. The ones that are not discovered yet, well, either A, people are hoarding onto them, they're keeping the knowledge themselves, or number two, it's only going to be a matter of time when people find out about them. Okay? So the Badness-O-Meter really is it's a story of vulnerability scanning. If your vulnerability scanner returns vulnerabilities, you're in deep trouble. If it doesn't return anything, what it means is it doesn't mean it's perfect. It means who the hell knows. Because it could be a critical vulnerability that is reported tomorrow that no vulnerability scanner has a system on, has information on. Okay, so I feel though engagement of being your own devil's advocate, you'll at least that is very true. You'll at least learn more and run into a lot of what you don't know. Not everything, of course. That's correct. But the worst thing is, I guess my real point is I see way too many people and customers and they're like real big customers, real big companies say when your vulnerability reporting software or your compliance report return nothing, green light everywhere. I mean, I'm done. All right, my system is secure. Here you go. But that's never going to be the case. Okay, you still have to protect your system. You still have to patch. You still have to you do good programming practices. You know all that. It just means that if your vulnerability scanner does not return anything, it means who knows. For now, it's good, but the risks are still out there. Okay, I've also held your question will determine the answer. Yeah. Do we need a virtual? Okay, hold on. Okay. So so here's the good news. Vulnerability scanning software and tools such as Nessus, okay, you may question the value of them, but there is a value is if it tells you you're in deep trouble, okay, that's good. Otherwise, okay, whatever. Okay. I want to answer. I'm going to avocado's questions and the two questions. Hold on a little bit later in a bit. I mean, we're almost done. Um, but again, badness-o-meter is your vulnerability software returns vulnerabilities, especially critical ones. You got to fix those right away. You're in deep trouble. But if it doesn't return anything, you got to stay vigilant. It doesn't mean you have no risk. The problems are still out there. Well, it's going to be dependent on what people find in the near future. The other thing is this. This was the other big lesson. One final thing is that this is the thing that pisses me off and a lot of people in security a lot. Do not use vulnerability scanning software as penetration tests. And this is basically fraud. A lot of there are, I'm not going to name names, name vendors, but there are companies who they're paid to do what is called penetration testing. Now, penetration testing is this. Penetration testing is breaking into the system. Like you breaking into the system to actually prove that the vulnerabilities exist. Okay, that's what penetration testing is. Penetration testing means actually breaking into the system using like SQL injection, of course. People, unfortunately, what they do is when they get hired for a penetration test, they just run Nessus scanning and just submit a report as a thing. They're two different things. Vulnerability scanning and penetration testing are two different things. Vulnerability scanning is just while scanning the vulnerability, but most, if not all, vulnerability scanners will not actually break into the system. Right? Sometimes it will identify the glaring vulnerability just like that. So, okay, SQL injection is a good one. All right, sometimes SQL injection is pretty easy, like it's pretty easy to see. What a vulnerability scanner will do is this. Okay, we have signs that SQL injection exists because we have username, because we got database error messages on the web page. That's a sign of SQL injection. That's what vulnerability scanners will do. But what the vulnerability scanner will usually not do is use SQL injection, break in a database, get a dump of all the millions of records. That's penetration testing. Don't get the two things mixed up. Penetration testing means you actually have to penetrate the system, break into the system, exploit the system. Vulnerability scanners usually don't do exploitation. Caveat. Okay? Alright, so now I want to go back and answer these two questions that we got. I'm done for the day. Do we need to have a virtual machine to have a faster vulnerability scan? Ooh, the answer is no. Careful what you wish for. Do you need a virtual machine to have a fast vulnerability scan? Usually the answer is no. Usually, here's the thing about virtual machines. Virtual machines usually will have overhead, so it doesn't necessarily mean a faster vulnerability scan. No. In fact, a lot of times virtual machine will cause more overhead than more than anything else. Kali Linux can run better than a Mac. Oh no 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 no. That's even worse. So I'll give you a tip. If you use a virtual machine on, like for example, Kali Linux running on top of a Mac, virtual machines will always run slower. Generally speaking, almost always run slower. Here's why. Everything's virtualized. Use virtual memory, virtualized networking software. Using a virtual machine is almost always slower. The worst one is password cracking. If you're using a virtual machine for password cracking, not only are you going to use a lot, you're going to use a lot of overhead, but even worse, the worser thing is it won't have direct access to hardware. Here's the deal. When you're cracking passwords, you always want to use native. A good example is this. Native systems, like Windows for example, will have direct access to the graphics card. Virtual machines usually will not have direct access to any hardware because everything is virtual. That's why they call it virtual machines. So the answer is no. Okay? So the answer is absolutely no. In fact, virtual machine almost always runs slower than the actual host. Now, I think you gotta... Yeah, and so avocado is potential. Okay, the vulnerability means that we have the key word that you said is potential penetration attack. Potential. Vulnerability means potential penetration attack. Perfect. Potential. That's the key word. But if you do an actual penetration test, you got to dump the entire database. You get to dump the entire database. Now, there was a couple of other questions that we got. Okay, so XenAccess, you said, okay, this is the app on, again, iOS, which looks weird. Which would you recommend a beginner to use at home? Which what? Vulnerability scanner? I would, if you're talking about vulnerability scanner, what I would recommend to use at home, yeah, use Nessus. I mean, they invest a lot of time and money to make it usable. Have you heard of people making? Oh, wait a minute. Your second question then access is: have you heard of people trying to make their network unseen and to be off the map and be off map within their home? Oh yeah, oh yeah. Have you heard people trying to make? Well, I wouldn't say unseen. I think that's kind of a strong word. So your questions and access: have you heard of people trying to make their network unseen and be off the map within their home network? I mean, are you trying to talk about people who are trying to run to create their own internet service provider? If that's the case, I mean, you hear stories of that all the time on Hacker News. Furthermore, make their network unseen, be off the map. Here's a good example for you. Well, since you asked that second question, I'm gonna quit this. I don't need this anymore. This thing's probably still running. Yeah, it's still running. I just let it run. Yeah, exit. Try this. XenAccess. Go to reddit.com/r. Go to the Home Lab subreddit. Yeah, I mean, people actually build their lab projects and build. I mean, people run home labs like this. But to completely be off the network, Yeah, I mean, I can say a lot of people run their own like movie studios from home lab. So yeah, build home. Yeah, a lot of people try to run their own network or their own lab. A lot of people, but to be completely unseen, I wouldn't say 100%. Usually, maybe like a small fraction of that. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Yeah, off the grid. Um, Hold on. Hacker News may have like people try to run their own ISPs off the grid. Uh, Home lab is probably the first thing that comes to mind when I think like people running their own network or to be quote unquote off the grid. Like people run their own. Like people as in the home lab community will run their own cloud. Literally their own cloud. Your own cloud for storage, for password storage. Oh yeah, home lab is a good place to look for. If also on a keynote here, if you really want to get good with cybersecurity and also networking, I mean, you learn a lot when you run your own home lab. And I've done that. I did that a long time ago. I just didn't like the server that I had because it was so damn noisy. But yeah, let me just say, if you want to learn a lot on cybersecurity and networking, build a home lab. That's a topic for another day. I'm just letting you know. Yeah. Oh yeah. Profit grid. Oh yeah. Uh, mm-hmm. Yep. Battery backups is a thing. I'm not investing. You can go crazy with this stuff. All right. So that's all, folks. We are done with vulnerability scanning. So we talked about vulnerability scanning and badness-o-meter. That's all we got for tonight, folks. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone. See you next week.